Rain hammered the rusted zinc roof as a small wheeled suitcase thumped down 3 concrete steps and burst open, scattering a thin stack of school books across the muddy yard. A trembling girl in a faded sky-blue dress clutched a wooden crutch and looked up at the doorway. Her stepmother stood there, arms folded, lips pressed into a hard line. "Out," the woman said. "Today. I will not feed a burden." The girl's name was Maya, 14, slim with cocoa-brown skin and a quiet, stubborn light in her eyes. Her left leg dragged a little when she moved, the result of a fever that had settled into bone and muscle years ago. She stared at her books in the mud, civic education, literature, basic science, then at the woman who had once promised to try, for the sake of Maya's late father. "Auntie Evelyn," Maya whispered, "please? Let me gather my—" Evelyn seized the crutch and jerked it from Maya's grip. The girl pitched forward and caught herself on her palms. Her breath snagged. The rain hissed. Somewhere down the street in Ajigunal, a generator coughed back to life and music spilled into the wet afternoon. "Stand on your own if you are not a burden," Evelyn snapped, flinging the crutch into the yard. "Your father is gone. I have my own children to think of." At the far end of the lane, a black SUV eased to a stop, its headlights cutting white paths through the rain. The back door swung open. A tall man in a charcoal suit stepped out holding an umbrella, shielding the phone at his ear. He carried a presence that made neighbors peek through curtains. Calm, expensive, the kind that said decisions were made around him, not to him. His name was DeAndre Carter, a Houston-born billionaire investor visiting Lagos to inspect a youth innovation hub he had quietly funded. He told his driver to slow because something about the scene at the gate, the girl, the suitcase, the rain, had gripped him. And because he knew that look on the girl's face, the practiced way of holding fear in the mouth and not letting it escape. Maya reached for the crutch, fingers slipping in the mud. Her little half-brother, Toby, peered from behind the door wide-eyed. "Mom," he said softly, "it's raining." "Go inside," Evelyn snapped, pushing him away. She turned back to Maya, voice a brittle whisper meant to carry through the rain. "You eat and eat. You cannot fetch water fast. You cannot sweep well. Even the neighbors pity you. Pity is not food. Go to your mother's people, if they still want you." "My mother has no people," Maya said, pushing up to her knees. "Only me." The SUV's door shut with a low, final sound. DeAndre crossed the puddled ground, his dress shoes darkening with every step. He held the umbrella out to cover Maya. Rain drummed on it, softer now, like the breath before a choice. "You okay, kid?" he asked. His voice carried Texas warmth and a Lagos street's patience. Maya lifted her chin, rain and tears mixing on her cheeks. "Yes, sir." Evelyn's gaze flicked over the suit, the watch, the car waiting like a silent guard. "Sir," she said, summoning a tight smile, "this is a family matter. Please go your way." "Family matters should look like care," DeAndre replied, gentle but firm. "Not like this." He crouched and picked up the scattered books, brushing mud from the covers one by one with a clean white handkerchief he'd pulled from his pocket. He placed them carefully back into the suitcase and zipped it closed. "There," he said, meeting Maya's eyes. "What's your name?" "Maya." "I'm DeAndre. Mr. Carter if you like." Something moved in his face, recognition maybe of a younger version of himself. He'd been the kid knocking on closed doors before a math teacher opened hers and slid a plate across the desk. He stood and addressed Evelyn. "May I ask why she's being put out in a storm?" Evelyn bristled. "Are you police?" "No." "Social welfare?" "No." "Then with respect, sir, I am not answering you. She is not my blood." Maya flinched. DeAndre looked at her and saw the flinch land like a stone in deep water, ripples spreading. "How long have you been using that crutch, Maya?" "Since I was 9, she said. "After I got sick." "Has a doctor looked at you recently?" She shook her head. "A nurse at the clinic said I might walk better if I see a specialist. But, we don't have," she cut the sentence in half as if poverty might be an insult to say out loud. Rain softened to a drizzle. Neighbors had gathered in their doorways, waiting for a line to cross, a word to be said that would tilt the afternoon into gossip material for a week. DeAndre weighed silence, then chose. He handed Maya the umbrella, bent to pick up her crutch and tested its rubber tip. He passed it back to her with a steadying hand beneath her elbow. "Can she stay the night?" he asked Evelyn. "At least until the rain stops." Evelyn stared at him. She seemed to count things, what kind of man he was, how heavy the watch looked, how quickly stories traveled. "She is already out," she said flatly. "What stays out, stays out." "Then she comes with me," DeAndre said. Gasp stitched the air. Maya's heart kicked. She'd expected rescue to look smaller. A neighbor with an extra mat, maybe, or a woman who would let her stay in exchange for chores. Not this. Not a stranger with a car that smelled like leather and who spoke slowly like people do when they are used to being heard. Sir, she started, searching for the words that fit into gratitude and fear at once. I don't. Her voice broke. It's not charity, DeAndre said. It's responsibility. Some of us have the power to change what we see. He faced Evelyn. I'll make sure she's safe. If you ever change your mind, you'll know where to find us. He pulled a card from his wallet and held it out. Evelyn did not take it. He laid it on the ledge by the door. Then he turned to Maya. You ready? She nodded, though her knees trembled. He guided her to the SUV, lifted the suitcase in, and helped her settle beside the window. The driver, an older man with kind eyes, glanced back in the mirror and smiled. Welcome, he said. Thank you, Maya whispered, gripping the handle above the door as if it could anchor her in this sudden, impossible shift. They pulled away from the house. Maya saw Toby's face in the doorway, both hands pressed to the wood. She lifted a small, brave wave. He didn't wave back, he just watched. The lane curved and the house vanished behind sheets of rain-washed air. Minutes later, on the expressway toward Victoria Island, DeAndre's phone buzzed. He answered and listened. Yes, he said. Tell the clinic we're coming now. Orthopedics. Schedule whatever scans they need. He ended the call and spoke to Maya. We'll do a full checkup. Tonight. If there's a path to walking stronger, we'll find it. Why? She asked, small and bewildered. Why me? Because you were there, he said simply. At the private clinic in Ikoyi, white light and quiet halls unfurled like a different country. Nurses moved gently around Maya, taking her history, checking reflexes, easing her onto a table for imaging. DeAndre sat in the corner, suit jacket folded over a chair, watching like a man guarding something fragile and new. When the orthopedic specialist arrived, Dr. Amin, precise and calm, he studied scans and explained in clear words Maya could follow. The old infection had damaged a growth plate. Her hip and knee were out of alignment. There were surgeries that could help, followed by months of therapy. Not a guarantee but a real chance. We can start with a less invasive procedure, Dr. Amin said. If she responds well, we proceed. She's young. Bones listen better when they are still learning. Do it, DeAndre said. The doctor nodded and left the room to arrange the first step. Maya looked at DeAndre. You didn't even ask about money, she said. I have enough, he replied. What I don't have is time to waste while someone's future sits in a waiting room. He stood and paced to the window. Outside, rain polished the city into silver. He rubbed his thumb against the crease in his palm where a scar lived, a gift from the day his own father had left and the world had shrunk for a while to a one-bedroom apartment and a mother who worked 3 jobs. People had stepped in. A teacher. A church deacon. A football coach. He had learned the shape of help and how it fit in a pocket without shame. Hours later, as night pressed against the clinic windows, a nurse returned with a consent form. She handed it to DeAndre. Are you her guardian? The nurse asked. He glanced at Maya, at the hollow of fear and hope in her eyes. I am now, he said. He signed his name with a steady hand, DeAndre Solomon Carter, and beneath it, the word that would rearrange 2 lives, guardian. They wheeled Maya toward the operating room doors. She looked back at him. Will you be here when I wake up? Right outside, he promised. The doors swung shut. The hallway settled into quiet, a hush that wrapped around his promise. He sat down, elbows on knees, and exhaled. A woman's voice floated from behind him. Mr. Carter? He turned. A social worker stood there with a folder against her chest. She spoke softly. We received a call, she said. From a neighbor. About the girl. We're glad she's safe. But before the operation begins, there's something you should see. She opened the folder and slid a paper toward him. An old, stamped document with a name he recognized at once. A name that did not belong to Evelyn. A name tied to a man with the kind of power that made even billionaires choose their words carefully. DeAndre's eyes widened, the edges of his composed world pulling apart. He looked up at the swinging doors that had just swallowed Maya, then back at the paper, feeling the ground tilt as the ink on the page spelled out a secret that could blow open everything he thought he was stepping into. The surgeon's call light blinked green. Do we proceed, sir? The nurse asked from the intercom. DeAndre stared at the document, heart thudding, and reached for the button, caught between the promise he'd made and the revelation that could change what guardian meant before the night was over. DeAndre stared at the page the social worker slid across the table. It wasn't just a complaint from a neighbor. It was a typed report from the family court registry in Surulere, a thin file fat with implication. At the top, stamped months ago, was Maya's full name, Maya Ifeoluwa Adesina, and beneath it a notation, pension survivor benefits pending. Minor identified. Custodial irregularities suspected. Attached was a photocopy of Maya's late father's pension record, his union card, and a list of monthly disbursements that had been collected by an adult, signed for by Evelyn Adesina, step-guardian. DeAndre felt the back of his neck go cold. Irregularities? The social worker, Ms. Ibekwe, nodded. She had the frank, tired warmth of someone who had seen too much yet refused to see less. 2 months ago, a school administrator submitted concerns. The girl's attendance dropped. There were signs of neglect. When we visited, Mrs. Adesina refused us entry. We scheduled a follow-up. She did not appear. But she kept collecting the survivor benefits. She kept the money meant for the child, DeAndre said, voice low. We don't assume guilt without due process, Ms. Ibekwe replied carefully. But the pattern is troubling. What matters tonight is this. We were preparing to file an emergency order to move the girl to a safe environment. Then your driver called us from the clinic. Sir, if you proceed with surgery, we need your formal consent as temporary guardian. If the court objects afterward, there could be questions. On the wall, the intercom blinked again. Mr. Carter? The nurse's voice was gentle. We must begin. The surgeon is scrubbed. DeAndre looked through the small window where the corridor turned. Beyond it, he imagined Maya on a gurney under steady lights that did not shout or scold, the way she had looked at the umbrella as if it were a door someone had finally opened. He inhaled, slow and full, then exhaled the way his Houston coach once taught him when the lines got loud and the clock got cruel. Tell the surgeon to proceed, he said. I consent as her guardian. Ms. Ibekwe studied his face, then nodded. I'll file a temporary guardianship note now. She tapped the folder. When she wakes, we'll take her statement. You should know, if the court finds misappropriation, there will be consequences for the stepmother. And the girl? DeAndre asked. What happens to her? We find her a home, she said, weighing the words. If this is your intention, Mr. Carter, we consider long-term placement with you. But the court will test you. They always test when the man offering help is rich. Let them test, he replied. The intercom light shifted from green to steady white. Somewhere beyond that door, gloved hands moved toward a future that had been waiting 4 years for a hinge. When the nurse returned, she offered a hairnet and a seat closer to the theater. You can't enter, sir, she said, but you can wait here. He thanked her and sat, elbows on his knees, the consent form warm beneath his fingertips. He read his name again, DeAndre Solomon Carter, and the word guardian beneath it. The title settled on him like a coat made to measure. Time inched. Rain pressed its forehead to the glass and stayed. A generator hummed softly, that relentless Lagos bassline. Across from him, a teenage boy in a red hoodie scrolled through his phone and sniffed, his mother asleep with her head on his shoulder. A poster on the wall read, Health is a decision we make together. DeAndre thought of the first time a door had opened for him. A math teacher had noticed he skipped lunch to save bus fare. She found him, slipped a sandwich into his bag without a speech and said, Tell me if the numbers refuse to add up. He had built his life on that sentence, listening where other people counted. He didn't hear the soft shoes until they stopped beside him. He looked up. A man and woman stood there, rain-damp and breathless. The man wore a cheap suit that tried too hard. The woman's belly sagged as if tied on the run. Evelyn. She planted her hands on her hips. Her eyes raked over him, the way people who have built small thrones do when a bigger chair enters the room. You think you can just take someone's child? She said, her voice threaded with a boldness fear had not had time to cut into. She's in surgery, DeAndre replied quietly. And I didn't take her. I offered safety. She chose not to be outside in a storm. The man beside her cleared his throat. I am Counselor Bamadil, he announced, pulling a plastic ID from his pocket and flashing it too quickly. Local council. Welfare matters. The girl belongs with her family. Ms. Ibekwe appeared like a necessary wind. Counselor, she said evenly, you do not have jurisdiction here. Family court does. And this clinic has a signed consent from the girl's temporary guardian of record. Evelyn snatched for the file, but the social worker held it steady. Guardian? Evelyn sputtered. Who signed it? Who is he to her? Someone who did not throw her into the rain, Ms. Ibekwe said. Evelyn's lips thinned. You don't know what that child does. Lazy bones. always making pity face. Since her father died, I fed her from my own pocket. From her father's pension pocket, the social worker corrected softly. Which you signed for. A flush rose over Evelyn's collar. She looked at the counselor. He shifted, found a different place for his hands and said, "Let us not quarrel in public. The gentleman can release the girl when she wakes up." DeAndre's gaze stayed on Evelyn. "When she wakes," he said, "I'll be there. If you want her, prove you deserve her. Bring school records. Bring receipts. Bring love." She opened her mouth, then closed it. For a moment, something small and human flickered in her face. Worry not for money or reputation, but perhaps for the boy at home watching the rain draw lines on the door. "You talk like you know," she muttered. "I know what it is to be small and still have a universe inside you," he said. The light above the operating theater shifted. The surgeon had entered. Movement changed from preparation to action. DeAndre's chest tightened. He felt the room gather itself the way rooms do before a birth or a verdict. As minutes stacked into an hour, the counselor drifted away to take a call. Evelyn slumped into a chair, arms folded like a shield made of elbows. Ms. Ibequi typed on her tablet, thumbs swift and sure, filing motions with a practiced grace that looked a little like prayer. At last the door swung open. Dr. Amin stepped out, eyes calm behind his mask. He pulled it down. "How is she?" DeAndre asked. "The first procedure went well," the doctor said. Relief flickered through the room like light on water. "We released a contracted tendon and corrected the angle at the knee with a guided plate. It will need time and therapy. This is step 1. If she responds as we hope, we will schedule a second-stage surgery." "She's waking now." Evelyn leaned forward despite herself. "Will she walk?" she asked. "With patience, work and care, yes," the doctor said. She came through bravely. The nurse wheeled Maya out a few minutes later, drowsy and blinking. Her leg was bandaged, a brace hugged her knee. DeAndre stood but did not rush her. He waited until her eyes found him. "You kept your promise?" she whispered. "Of course." Evelyn hovered at the foot of the bed. For a heartbeat, she looked like a mother caught between the habit of hardness and a muscle she hadn't used in a long time. "Maya," she said, voice low and urgent, "come home after this." We will manage." Maya's face tightened with a question that had lived in her a long time. "What does home mean when the door will not let you in?" She licked her lips. "Home is where I'm not a burden," she said softly. Evelyn flinched and a thing brittle in the air cracked. The nurse began to wheel Maya toward recovery. DeAndre walked beside them, hands loose, steps careful. Miss Ibequi fell in on the other side. "We'll let her rest, then I'll take her statement," the social worker murmured. "We have a court slot open in 3 days. If you intend to petition for legal guardianship, we can advise." "Adoption," DeAndre said before the word could frighten itself from his mouth. It surprised even him how naturally it fell. "If she wants it, I will adopt her." Miss Ibequi's eyes softened. "Then begin as you mean to continue." They reached the recovery room, a small space with clean sheets and a window that caught the last pale wash of rain. Maya turned her head toward the glass, as if somewhere beyond it, tomorrow had lifted its hand to wave. On the bedside table lay a small envelope someone had tucked among the charts, its edges worn, the ink faded. The nurse frowned. "This wasn't here a moment ago." DeAndre picked it up. The front read, in a sky-blue script that trembled, "For Maya, on the day someone finally sees you." He looked at Ms. Ibequi. She shook her head, she didn't know. He slid a finger under the flap and drew out a single folded paper. It was a letter, dated a year ago, with the neat, careful handwriting of someone taught to write with respect. "To whom it may concern, if you are reading this, please help my daughter." The signature at the bottom stopped his breath. It was not Maya's late father's name. It was a woman's, Ngozi Ifeoluwa, Maya's mother. But the witness line beneath, the small half-print name that had signed as witness, made every thought in DeAndre's head stumble. Signed, T. Carter. He stared at the letters, T. Carter. For a long second the room narrowed to that ink. Carter. His mother's maiden line, his father's middle. The nurse's voice came from far away. "Sir? Is everything all right?" DeAndre swallowed, his pulse thudding at his wrist. He looked down again to be sure he hadn't invented it. T. Carter. And below it a phone number. An American number with a Houston code. He lifted his head, hearing in his memory his own mother's stories of the church where she sang alto, of the food pantry, of a woman named Tony Carter who ran the neighborhood clinic like a general with a gentle voice. He had not thought of Tony in years. The phone number on the letter matched that old clinic's exchange. "Who put this here?" he asked quietly. No one knew. The nurse crossed herself. Evelyn had gone unseen from the doorway. The counselor's voice rose and fell in the corridor like the sea, wondering if it should come in. DeAndre closed his hand around the letter, felt the thinness of the paper and the heaviness of its thread. He looked at Maya, sleeping now, her breath a small tide, and then at the window where the sky brightened to the color of decisions. Mr. Carter? Miss Ibequi said, reading his face. Is there a problem? He shook his head, though he wasn't sure. Not a problem, he said. A path. He reached into his pocket for his phone, thumb hovering over the keypad. He could call the number now, tear open the seam of coincidence, fold destiny into something you could iron flat. He could wait, build the case, hold the girl through therapy, file the papers, keep his world neat. The door behind them hissed and opened. A man in a dark polo with the clinic's crest stepped in, eyes grave. Mr. Carter, he said, there's a situation at the front desk. A woman is demanding to see the patient. She has a lawyer. And she brought the police. The nurse's hand froze on the foredrip. Everyone in the recovery room turned at once. DeAndre, the social worker, even the resting Maya stirred faintly as though she could sense the air tightening. DeAndre straightened, pocketing the letter. Police? He repeated calmly. The man in the clinic polo nodded. Yes, sir. They say it's a custody matter. The woman claims the girl was taken without her consent. Ms. Ibequi groaned softly, pressing a hand to her temple. Evelyn doesn't waste time, does she? She's brought a lawyer too, the staffer added. They're at the reception desk, demanding to see both of you immediately. DeAndre's jaw tightened. He glanced toward Maya. She lay still, her face pale but peaceful beneath the soft hospital light. The rhythmic beep of the monitor was steady, a reminder that this fragile, beautiful life was the only thing that truly mattered. Stay with her, he told the nurse. No one comes in here without my permission. Not even the lawyer. Then he turned to Ms. Ibequi. Let's go. They walked briskly down the white corridor. The faint smell of antiseptic and rain lingered in the air. With each step, DeAndre felt his pulse climb, but his voice, when he finally spoke, was controlled. She thinks she can bully her way into this, he said. She's desperate, the social worker replied. Once she realizes her source of money is gone, she'll do anything to get it back. When they entered the reception area, Evelyn was already there, standing beside a thin, sharp-faced lawyer in a shiny gray suit, her arms folded and lips pursed into triumph. Two police officers lingered nearby, clearly uncomfortable but following protocol. Evelyn's voice cut through the room. That's him. The man who took my daughter. The lawyer stepped forward. Good evening. I'm Barrister Okari, representing Mrs. Adesina. My client reports that this gentleman removed her ward without consent. That is child abduction under Nigerian law. Ms. Ibequi moved quickly between them, flashing her ID. I'm from the Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development. The ministry authorized Mr. Carter's temporary guardianship for medical intervention pending investigation into Mrs. Adesina's neglect. The lawyer raised a brow. Temporary guardianship? Issued on what authority? Under the Child Rights Act, Section 71, she replied crisply. Emergency custody is lawful when a child's welfare is at risk. And given the reports from the child's school and neighbors, risk is well documented. The officers shifted uneasily. One of them, a tall man with kind eyes, cleared his throat. Barrister, maybe we should confirm this before we proceed with arrest or removal. Evelyn scowled. Officer, the man is trying to steal my child because he's rich. Look at him. DeAndre's patience snapped into something like steel. Madam, he said quietly, stepping closer, if I wanted to steal something, it wouldn't be what you threw away. The lobby went still. Even the hum of the generator outside seemed to hold its breath. Evelyn flinched but quickly masked it with anger. You don't know what you're saying. That girl, she's cursed. Since she was small, trouble follows her. She was born wrong. DeAndre's gaze darkened. No child is born wrong. They're made to feel wrong by people who should protect them. The lawyer intervened again, his tone slick but shaky now. My client merely wants her daughter released back into her home. Any disputes over custody can be settled later. Then let's settle it properly, Ms. Ibequi said. Tomorrow morning, family court, Surulere Division. Bring your documents, receipts, and pension statements. We'll present ours. Let the judge decide who truly cares for Maya's welfare. Evelyn hesitated, clearly realizing this wasn't going her way. You can't stop me from seeing her, she muttered. DeAndre took a step forward, his voice low but unwavering. You already saw her. You saw her when you threw her crutch into the mud and told her to stand on her own. That was your moment to be a mother. Her face drained of color. For a second, her mask cracked, revealing the exhaustion and bitterness beneath, years of resentment calcified into cruelty. Then she turned sharply toward the exit. "We'll see what the court says," she hissed and stormed out with her lawyer trailing behind. The two officers exchanged a look, then nodded respectfully to DeAndre. "Sorry for the disturbance, sir. We'll file a neutral report." "Thank you," he said quietly. When the lobby emptied, Ms. Ibequi exhaled. "She'll fight dirty," she said. "But you handled that well." DeAndre didn't answer. He was staring through the rain-streaked glass at the dark shape of Evelyn's car disappearing into the night. He knew this wasn't over. He also knew something she didn't. That letter with the Houston number still burned in his pocket, whispering questions about who Maya's real family might be. Back in the recovery room, Maya was half awake when he returned. Her eyes fluttered open as the nurse adjusted her blanket. "Did they come for me?" she asked weakly. He sat beside her and nodded. "They came. But you're safe, Maya. No one will take you away again." Her lips trembled. "Promise?" "I promise," he said softly. She smiled faintly and drifted back to sleep. He sat there for a long time listening to her breathing. The letter was still folded in his palm. Finally, he unfolded it again and looked at the number written at the bottom. The digits glowed faintly under the fluorescent light, an American number beginning with +1, 713. Houston. His mind turned over possibilities. Who was Tony Carter? Why had she witnessed Maya's mother's letter? And what if, somehow, this wasn't a coincidence at all? The thought lingered as the city outside grew quiet. The next morning, Maya woke to soft sunlight seeping through the curtains. The rain had stopped. She shifted in bed and gasped, not in pain but surprise. Her legs still hurt, but for the first time in years it moved. Her toes twitched beneath the sheets. She looked at DeAndre, who had fallen asleep on the sofa, his jacket folded as a pillow. "Sir," she whispered. "Look." He blinked awake, then smiled slowly as he saw her foot move. "Well," he said with a grin, "seems we're already winning." Maya laughed through her tears. It was a sound so pure the nurse at the door smiled too. "Rest, my dear," DeAndre said. "There's still a journey ahead." As he stood to stretch, his phone buzzed. A known number. He hesitated, then answered. "Mr. Carter?" A woman's voice, older, calm, with the faint lilt of Houston in her vowels. "This is Tony Carter. You don't know me, but I think you have something that once belonged to me, or someone I used to know." DeAndre froze. "Tony Carter?" "Yes," she said softly. "And if you're the DeAndre Carter I think you are, the boy from 3rd Ward who used to sit outside the clinic with his mother, then maybe fate is trying to finish something it started a long time ago." He gripped the phone tighter. "You knew Maya's mother?" There was a pause, then a sigh that carried the weight of many buried truths. "Knew her?" Tony said. "Child, she was my sister." DeAndre's breath caught. He turned slowly toward Maya, who was now watching him curiously from the bed. Her aunt. The letter. The coincidence that wasn't a coincidence after all. He stared out the window at the rising sun, realization dawning like fire. This girl, this frail, brave girl who had been kicked into the rain, wasn't just someone he'd rescued. She was family. And before he could say a word, the voice on the phone whispered, "We need to talk, DeAndre. There are things you don't know about that child's father, and why Evelyn truly wanted her gone." The line went dead. DeAndre's heart pounded in his chest. He looked at the phone, then at Maya, who smiled faintly and said, "Is something wrong, sir?" He forced a calm smile. "Nothing's wrong, Maya. Everything's about to make sense." But deep inside he knew, this was only the beginning. Tell me your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story so more people can hear Maya's incredible journey. Also, comment where you're watching from. I'd love to know which part of the world our viewers are joining us from. DeAndre stood by the window long after the call ended, the early Lego sunlight spilling across the tiled floor like a quiet revelation. He still held his phone loosely, Tony Carter's voice echoing in his mind. "We need to talk. There are things you don't know about that child's father." Behind him, the heart monitor hummed gently, its rhythm matching the pulse beating at his temples. He turned slowly toward Maya. She was awake now, sitting upright with the nurse's help, a small bowl of pap and milk on the tray before her. Her smile was shy but radiant. "Good morning, sir," she said. "The nurse says I'm healing faster than they expected." He smiled back. "Morning, Maya. That's the best news I've heard all week." but the warmth in his voice couldn't quite hide the storm building behind his eyes. He wanted to tell her everything, about the phone call, about the letter, about the fact that the woman on the other end might be her aunt. But part of him hesitated. She'd been through so much pain already, he couldn't throw her into more confusion until he understood the full truth. "Eat up," he said gently. "We've got a long day ahead." "Court?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "Yes. But don't worry. You're not facing it alone." By mid-morning they were in the family court at Surulere, a small, beige building with faded paint and the Nigerian coat of arms above the entrance. The corridors were crowded with mothers, fathers, and frightened children clutching files. Inside the courtroom the air was thick with tension. At one end sat the magistrate, a middle-aged woman with silver-rimmed glasses and eyes that missed nothing. Evelyn sat at the opposite bench with her lawyer, dressed neatly in lace and gold jewelry that shimmered a little too brightly for someone claiming poverty. Maya sat beside DeAndre, her crutch by her side, her bandaged leg resting on a stool. Her fingers gripped his sleeve tightly. "Relax," he whispered. "Truth has a sound of its own." When the magistrate called the case, the State versus Mrs. Evelyn Adesina, matter concerning the custody and welfare of minor Maya Ifeoluwa Adesina, every murmur in the room faded. Ms. Ibekwe stood first, presenting the ministry's report. She spoke with calm authority, describing the evidence. Maya's poor living conditions, the unreported absence from school, the misuse of her father's pension. The gallery gasped when she presented the bank receipts showing Evelyn's withdrawals, far above what was needed for a child's upkeep. Evelyn's lawyer rose next, all indignation and smooth words. "My client merely used the funds to sustain the household and keep the girl clothed and fed. She's been a devoted mother since the child's biological father passed away." The magistrate's gaze sharpened. "Yet the child was found on the street during a rainstorm, bruised and without shelter. Is that your definition of devotion?" Evelyn faltered, her lips trembling slightly. "It was a misunderstanding, your worship. She ran out after I scolded her." Maya's quiet voice broke the silence. "That's not true, Ma. You pushed me out." The room went still. Evelyn turned sharply. "You liar," she hissed before realizing where she was. The magistrate's gavel struck the table once, the sound cutting through the air like thunder. "Control yourself, Mrs. Adesina," the judge warned. "You will not raise your voice in my court." Tears filled Maya's eyes, but she kept going. "She threw away my books and my crutch," she said. "I begged to stay, but she said I was a burden. If Mr. Carter hadn't come that day, I would have slept in the rain." The magistrate leaned back in her chair, eyes softening briefly. "Thank you, child. That's enough." Then she turned to DeAndre. "Mr. Carter, you're not a relative of the child, are you?" He hesitated. "That's what I believed, your worship." The magistrate frowned slightly. "Believed?" He nodded, taking a breath. "But there's new information that might change that. A letter from the child's late mother was found at the clinic. It mentions a witness, Tony Carter, who contacted me this morning. She claims to have been the deceased woman's sister." A murmur ran through the courtroom. The magistrate raised a brow. "And this Tony Carter is?" "My late father's cousin," DeAndre said. "Which would make Maya." He stopped. The words were too large to fit into the silence. "My blood." The magistrate looked stunned for a moment before recovering her composure. "This is an extraordinary claim. Do you have proof of kinship?" "I've asked her to send documents, birth certificates, family records. She's in the U.S., he said. But I have reason to believe she's telling the truth." The magistrate tapped her pen thoughtfully. "We will confirm. But until then, I must act in the best interest of the child." She looked at Maya, who sat watching with wide eyes. "Do you wish to return to your stepmother's home?" Maya shook her head firmly. "No, Ma. Please. I'm safe where I am." Evelyn's lawyer rose in protest, but the magistrate lifted a hand. "Enough. Based on the testimony, medical evidence, and ongoing investigation into the pension misuse, I hereby grant temporary custody of Maya Ifeoluwa Adesina to Mr. DeAndre Carter under supervision of the Ministry of Women Affairs. A review will be held in 60 days. The gavel struck. Evelyn gasped as if she'd been slapped. DeAndre reached for Maya's hand. She looked at him, her lips trembling, and whispered, "Thank you." He smiled. "You don't thank family. You just come home." Evelyn rose abruptly, fury burning in her eyes. "You think this is over?" she spat. "That girl will destroy you just like she destroyed everyone around her." But the magistrate's voice was cold. "Mrs. Adesina, one more word and you'll be held in contempt." Evelyn swallowed her rage and stormed out of the courtroom, her shoes clacking like the last echoes of a broken rein. That night, DeAndre and Maya moved into his guest home in Lekki, a quiet estate lined with palm trees and white walls that smelled faintly of sea breeze. Maya stood at the threshold, staring at the wide living room, the piano gleaming in the corner, the walls covered with paintings of Lagos street markets and American jazz musicians. "Is this where you live?" she whispered. He nodded. "Yes. But from now on it's where we live." Her eyes widened. "It's beautiful." He smiled. "So are you, kid." She blushed and looked down at her leg brace. "I still can't walk properly." "You will," he said gently. "We're flying to Houston next week. There's a hospital there that can help you finish what the surgery started." She blinked. "America?" "America," he confirmed, laughing softly at her expression. "Your mother's sister will meet us there." At that, her gaze flicked up sharply. "My mother's sister? You mean, there's family?" DeAndre nodded. "There's family, Maya. Real family." Her lips parted, her eyes shining with hope and disbelief all at once. Then quietly she said, Maybe I wasn't abandoned after all." He rested a hand on her shoulder. "You were never the one abandoned. The world just took too long to find you." For the first time in years she smiled, a full, unguarded smile that reached her eyes. Later that night, as DeAndre stood on the balcony watching the ocean shimmer under the moonlight, his phone buzzed again. A message from Tony Carter lit the screen. "DNA results confirmed. Maya is Ngozi's daughter. I'm sending you something tomorrow, something about her father. Be careful who you trust. There's more to Evelyn than you know." DeAndre's heart thudded. He typed back, "What do you mean?" The reply came almost instantly. Her father's death wasn't natural. And Evelyn wasn't just a stepmother. She was involved. He froze, staring out into the night, the ocean whispering below like a witness to long-buried secrets. Somewhere inside the house, Maya laughed softly at a movie playing on TV, a sound of light, of innocence reborn. But DeAndre knew, darkness was still lurking behind them. And if Tony was right, this was far from over. The next morning, Lagos woke with the sound of generators, distant horns, and life rushing back into the streets. Inside DeAndre's home, the aroma of fried eggs and yam drifted through the open hallway. Maya sat at the dining table wearing a soft pink gown, her crutch leaning by her chair. She was smiling, that quiet, fresh smile of someone still not used to peace. DeAndre watched from the doorway, his phone in hand, unread messages glowing on the screen from Tony Carter. He barely slept. Her last words echoed in his mind like a warning bell. Her father's death wasn't natural. Evelyn was involved. He wasn't sure how to bring it up, not yet. But he knew he had to uncover the truth before they left for Houston. "Morning, champ," he said, forcing a smile. "How's the leg?" Maya grinned. "It hurts less. The nurse says I'm healing faster than expected. Maybe one day I'll even dance again." "You will," he said. "Maybe not today. But soon." She nodded, her eyes glowing. Then she glanced toward the TV, which was showing the morning news. The anchor's voice carried clearly. "In a shocking update, police have opened an investigation into the suspicious death of late Mr. Adewale Adesina, a civil engineer whose pension funds became the subject of controversy following abuse claims by his widow, Mrs. Evelyn Adesina." The words made DeAndre's blood run cold. Maya froze, spoon halfway to her mouth. "That's my father," she whispered. Before he could stop her, she turned up the volume. The news continued. Authorities suspect foul play after discrepancies were found in hospital records. Investigators are now questioning his widow and a family associate in connection with missing medical reports. Maya's spoon clattered onto the plate. "They think my stepmother did something to my daddy?" DeAndre exhaled slowly. "It's just an investigation for now, Maya. Don't panic." Her small hands trembled. "But she told everyone he died in his sleep. He said he was tired after work and never woke up again. That's what she said." He walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Listen, whatever happened, it's not your fault. You hear me?" She nodded weakly, her lips trembling. If she did something to him, why would she hate me too?" DeAndre's voice was gentle. "Because people who destroy love can't stand to look at reminders of it." Her eyes filled with tears. "He loved me so much, sir. He said I was his star. Every night he'd tell me, 'Maya, when you walk again, you'll walk into your destiny.' I still remember that." DeAndre's chest tightened. "Then let's make sure he was right." He picked up his phone, stepped away, and dialed Tony's number. She answered on the first ring. DeAndre. Tony, it's on the news already. They're investigating the father's death. You said Evelyn was involved. Tell me everything you know. Tony sighed deeply. Back when Ngozi was alive, she called me from Nigeria, frantic. She said her husband suspected his business partner and Evelyn of stealing from their company. The night before his death, he told her he'd uncovered proof. The next morning he was dead. Evelyn called it a heart attack, but there were bruises on his neck. The doctor who attended him vanished a week later. DeAndre's voice hardened. So Evelyn got rid of anyone who could expose her. Yes, Tony said. And when Ngozi tried to flee to me in Houston, she fell ill. By the time her letter reached me, she'd passed. That's when I realized her daughter might still be alive. I tried to trace her through the embassy, but Evelyn had falsified papers. She listed Maya as medically unfit and dependent. No one looked further. DeAndre felt a chill crawl down his spine. That woman buried more than one truth. Be careful, Tony warned. If she knows the police are looking into her, she'll panic. And desperate people are dangerous. I'll handle her, DeAndre said quietly. She won't hurt Maya again. 2 days later, DeAndre drove Maya to the airport for their flight to Houston. She wore a simple blue gown and sneakers on her bandaged leg. Her crutch gleamed under the terminal lights. People turned to look at her, not with pity but admiration. At the check-in counter, she whispered, I've never been on a plane before. He smiled. Then today you conquer the sky. She giggled. Do they give food on the plane? They do, he said, chuckling. And movies too. As they boarded, he noticed a woman at the far end of the terminal, sunglasses, scarf, clutch bag, watching them. When he looked again, she turned away and disappeared into the crowd. He frowned. The outline had been unmistakable. Evelyn. The flight took 13 hours. Maya slept through most of it, her head resting on his arm. DeAndre barely closed his eyes. His mind raced with questions. About Evelyn, about the father's murder, about what awaited them in Houston. When they landed, a woman in her 60s stood waiting at the arrival gate. Tony Carter, DeAndre said, recognizing her instantly from his childhood memories. She smiled warmly and hugged him. Look at you, all grown up and saving lost children now. Then she turned to Maya, eyes brimming with tears. And you, my sweet niece, you have your mother's eyes. Maya blinked in disbelief. My mother's sister? Tony nodded, cupping her face. Yes, baby. I'm your Aunt Tony. I promised your mama I'd find you. Maya burst into tears and hugged her tightly. I thought I was alone. Tony's voice trembled. Not anymore. You're home now. DeAndre watched them, emotion burning behind his calm expression. For the first time he felt the heavy knot in his chest loosen. Maybe, just maybe, this was what destiny looked like when it finally came full circle. A week passed in Houston. Maya's second surgery was scheduled at Texas Orthopedic Hospital, under a top pediatric specialist. The prognosis was excellent. She'll walk again, the doctor said. Her bones are young. They'll respond beautifully. Maya clapped her hands with joy. I'll walk again. Aunt Tony, did you hear that? Tony laughed. Yes, my darling. God is rewriting your story. That night, they celebrated with jollof rice and grilled chicken. DeAndre watched as Maya and Tony sang softly to old gospel tunes in the living room. There was peace, simple golden peace. But it didn't last. At 2 a.m. his phone buzzed. Unknown Nigerian number. He answered, voice groggy. Mr. Carter, a low male voice said. This is Inspector Bekare, Lagos Police Command. We have a problem. DeAndre sat up instantly. What is it? The inspector hesitated. Mrs. Evelyn Adesina escaped custody during questioning tonight. We believe she fled Nigeria using forged documents. DeAndre's pulse spiked. You think she's coming here? That's the fear, the inspector replied. She was last seen boarding a flight to the United States. If she reaches you, she might try to retrieve the girl or silence anyone who knows the truth. DeAndre stood, staring toward the dark hallway where Maya slept. Thank you for the warning, Inspector. As he ended the call, the night seemed to grow heavier. He moved to the window, and froze. Across the quiet Houston street, parked beneath a street lamp, was a black sedan with its engine idling. The silhouette of a woman sat behind the wheel, her face hidden by the glare. Evelyn. She had found them. DeAndre's jaw clenched as he reached for his phone. Tony, he whispered, wake Maya. Don't make noise. We're not safe. Because the stepmother who had thrown the poor disabled girl into the rain had crossed oceans to finish what she started. And this time DeAndre was ready for her. The night was silent except for the faint hum of the black sedan outside. Moonlight filtered through the blinds, slicing the living room into silver lines. DeAndre stood still, every muscle in his body tensed, eyes fixed on the shadow behind the car's windshield. Tony came padding down the hallway, robe wrapped tight, eyes wide with fear. "What's wrong?" she whispered. He nodded toward the window. "She's here." Tony's face paled. "Evelyn?" "Yes. She found us." Before either could say more, a soft knock sounded on the door, 3 deliberate taps. Knock. 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 DeAndre motioned for Tony to stay back. He picked up the small baseball bat he kept near the staircase, a habit from his old neighborhood days in Houston, and approached the door quietly. Another knock. "Open the door," a woman's voice called sweetly, muffled through the wood. "DeAndre, it's me. I just want to talk." Tony's hand went to her mouth. "Don't open it," she hissed. "She's dangerous." DeAndre didn't move. "You flew across the ocean just to talk?" he called through the door. There was a long pause. Then Evelyn's voice came again, sharper now, colder. "You don't understand what you're playing with. That girl doesn't belong to you. She belongs to me." "No," DeAndre said firmly. "You lost that right the day you threw her out in the rain. She's my husband's child." Evelyn screamed, the calm tone snapping apart. "And her father." "Her father?" he interrupted. "You mean the man you murdered?" Silence. For a heartbeat, the whole house seemed to stop breathing. Then came a low, trembling laugh from the other side of the door. "You think you know everything, don't you?" Evelyn said. "You rich men always think the truth fits neatly into your pretty little boxes. But you have no idea what that man did before he died. None." Tony's voice shook. "Evelyn, go away before I call the police." "Oh, you'll want to hear this first," Evelyn sneered. "Maya's father wasn't some innocent man. He was stealing from his own company. He tried to frame me. And when he realized I had the papers that could expose him, he begged me to destroy them. I didn't kill him, I saved myself." "Lies." Tony cried. "You poisoned him." "I didn't poison him," Evelyn snapped. "He took something that wasn't his. It was his heart medication. He overdosed himself trying to calm down. But of course, everyone blames me because it's easier to blame the wicked stepmother." DeAndre's voice was low but steady. "If that's true, why run?" "Because people like you never listen," she hissed. "You and your kind think money buys truth. But that girl, she's not what you think either." He froze. "What do you mean?" Evelyn's tone softened into something venomously sweet. "You think she's your blood, don't you? That story about her mother being your cousin's sister? How convenient. Did your dear Aunt Tony tell you everything?" Tony stiffened. "Don't listen to her, DeAndre." Evelyn laughed again, louder now, echoing off the porch walls. "Ngozi wasn't Tony's sister by blood. They grew up in the same foster home in Port Harcourt. Your aunt lied to you because she wanted to keep Maya close. The truth? Maya's real father wasn't a Desina. It was a man Ngozi met before her marriage, a man from America." DeAndre's pulse quickened. "What did you say?" Evelyn pressed closer to the door, her voice a low whisper now. "Your own father, DeAndre Carter." The words hit like a thunderclap. Tony gasped audibly, covering her mouth. "She's lying," she whispered, shaking her head. "She's twisting things." DeAndre staggered back a step, his mind spinning. His father had been stationed in Nigeria for a year before returning to Houston. Could it be true? Could the pieces, the uncanny resemblance, the timing, fit that dark puzzle? He steadied himself. "You're making this up," he said. Evelyn chuckled. "Am I? Ask your aunt. Ask her who Ngozi's child really was. I have a letter, Mr. Carter. One Ngozi wrote before she died. She didn't want you to know because she didn't think your family would accept her. I kept it. And now it's yours, for a price." Tony stepped forward, trembling. "Evelyn, stop this. You've already ruined enough lives." Evelyn ignored her. "Open the door, DeAndre. Let me in and we'll talk like adults. You'll get your truth. You'll get your peace." DeAndre looked at Tony, then at the front door. "Where's the letter?" he asked. Evelyn smiled behind the wood. "In my bag. But you'll never see it if you don't let me in." A shadow shifted upstairs. Maya was standing on the staircase, clutching the railing, her crutch beside her. "Sir, is that my stepmother?" she whispered. He turned quickly. "Go back to bed, Maya." But she didn't. She limped forward slowly, her small voice trembling. "You don't have to hide me anymore. Let her see me walk." "Maya, please," Tony said, her voice cracking. "Stay there." But the girl kept coming, her movements steady, her face pale but fierce. For the first time, she wasn't the frightened child from Ajigunal. She was standing in her power. When she reached the door, she raised her voice. "You said I'd never walk again. Look at me now, Mama Evelyn. I can stand." From outside came a sharp intake of breath. Then Evelyn's voice, brittle with shock. "Maya?" "Yes," the girl said. "I'm not your burden anymore. You left me in the rain, but God sent someone to lift me up. You can't hurt me again." For a moment, there was only silence. Then Evelyn's voice trembled. "I didn't mean for it to go that far." "Then why did you?" Maya's voice was rising now, trembling with years of swallowed pain. "Why did you hate me so much? Was it because I looked like my daddy? Or because you could never love me the way he did?" No answer came. Finally, DeAndre moved closer to the door. "Leave, Evelyn. You've done enough." But when he looked through the peephole, the porch was empty. The car engine revved, then faded into the night. She was gone. The next morning, the Houston police came to take statements after DeAndre called in the incident. They found tire tracks but no sign of Evelyn or the letter she claimed to have. Later that day, as Maya prepared for her final surgery, DeAndre stood outside the hospital room, still wrestling with the question Evelyn had planted like a seed of poison. What if Maya truly was his father's child? What if she was family, not just by love but by blood? Tony joined him quietly. "You're thinking about what she said." He nodded slowly. "Is it true, Tony? Was Ngozi my father's lover?" Tony hesitated, eyes glistening. "It was before your father met your mother. He worked in Lagos then." "Yes, they were close. But he never knew she was pregnant. Ngozi left before she could tell him." DeAndre exhaled sharply. "So it's true. Maya is my half-sister." Tony nodded. "Yes. And now you know why God sent you that night to rescue her. Blood recognizes blood even when we don't see it." He looked through the window at Maya, sitting up in bed, smiling as she folded paper cranes with a nurse. The truth should have shattered him, but instead it made everything make sense. The instant connection, the fierce need to protect her, the unexplainable pull. He whispered, "Then I was never saving a stranger." "No," Tony said softly. "You were bringing your sister home." Hours later, the surgery began. DeAndre and Tony waited in the hall again, just as he had weeks ago in Lagos. But this time there was no fear, only faith. 2 hours passed. Then the doctor emerged, smiling. "She did beautifully. She'll walk without support within 6 months." Tony cried openly. DeAndre could only nod, his throat tight. "Thank you, doctor." When they entered the recovery room, Maya was drowsy but awake. "Sir?" she whispered. "Did it work?" "It worked," he said. "You're free now, Maya. No more crutches." Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for saving me." He took her hand gently. "You saved yourself, little sister." Her eyes widened. "Sister?" He smiled. "Yes, Maya. I found out the truth. We share the same blood. We're family." She stared at him for a moment, then burst into tears. "So, I'm really not alone anymore?" "Never again," he said, his voice breaking. She reached up and hugged him, her tiny arms around his neck. For the first time in her life, she felt what home truly meant. Outside the window, morning light broke through the Houston skyline, bright, golden, and whole. But far away in a motel on the outskirts of town, Evelyn sat by a window, holding a worn envelope in her shaking hands, the real letter from Ngozi. Her reflection in the glass looked older, emptier. She whispered to herself, "I never meant to hurt her." Then she opened the envelope, and inside, along with a faded photo of a smiling young woman holding a baby, were words that would change everything once again. "If anything happens to me, tell DeAndre Carter the truth. He must know his father's blood lives on." Evelyn stared at it, tears falling silently. "Oh God," she breathed. "What have I done?" She stood slowly, the letter trembling in her hands, knowing she had one final choice: hide forever or face the truth she had spent a lifetime running from. And for the first time, Evelyn began to cry, not out of anger, but out of something like repentance. Tell us what you do in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story so more people can witness Maya's miraculous journey from pain to purpose. Houston woke to a gentle sunrise. The hospital windows glowed amber as light poured through, kissing Maya's face. She stirred, stretching her newly bandaged leg, her eyes fluttering open to the new morning that felt like rebirth. DeAndre was by her side, head bowed slightly, hands clasped in silent prayer. When he lifted his eyes, a rare calm filled them, like a man who had finally made peace with the truth. "Good morning, sunshine," he said softly. Maya smiled weakly. "You didn't sleep again, did you?" He chuckled. "Guess I didn't. I didn't want you to wake up alone." Her smile deepened. "You don't have to keep watching over me all the time." He leaned forward. "I do. That's what big brothers do." Her eyes widened, the words sinking in again, sweeter than the first time she'd heard them. "Big brother," she whispered, testing the sound of it like a precious new word. "I like that." They both laughed softly, an easy, unguarded laughter that filled the room. Just then the door opened. Tony entered with a paper bag filled with breakfast sandwiches and a small envelope clutched in her other hand. But her smile was strained. "Good morning," DeAndre greeted her. "You look like you've seen a ghost." She closed the door quietly and took a deep breath. "Because I almost did." He frowned. "What do you mean?" Tony handed him the envelope. "This came by courier just now. No name on the sender, just this note." He opened it and froze. Inside was the letter, the original one from Ngozi, Maya's mother, and a small flash drive taped to the bottom corner. On the flap, in neat handwriting, were the words, "Forgive me. I couldn't run forever. Evelyn." Maya gasped. "She sent that?" DeAndre exhaled slowly, scanning the letter. It was written in Ngozi's delicate cursive, the ink faded but clear. "To my daughter Maya. If I'm gone, please know that I loved you more than life itself. I wish you to find peace, and when you do, I want you to forgive those who wronged us. To DeAndre, if this ever reaches you, remember that goodness can survive even in broken homes. Protect her as I could not. She is your father's legacy." He stopped reading, voice thick with emotion. She knew. Tony touched his arm gently. "She knew destiny would bring you two together." He turned the flash drive in his hand. "I need to see what's on this." The nurse helped set up a hospital laptop, and within minutes the screen flickered to life. A video opened. The image was grainy, a hospital room in Lagos recorded years ago. A frail woman lay in bed, oxygen tubes on her nose. It was Ngozi. Her voice was weak but steady. "If this reaches anyone, tell my daughter I forgive Evelyn. She wasn't evil, just afraid. Afraid of losing love, afraid of poverty. Fear can make monsters of us all." She coughed softly and looked directly at the camera. "And if DeAndre Carter ever sees this, your father was a good man and you are like him. Please take care of her. She deserves a chance to walk into light." The video ended. The screen went dark. Silence filled the room. Then Maya wiped her tears with trembling hands. "She forgave her, after everything?" "Yes," Tony said softly. "Your mother had the kind of heart that saw through pain." DeAndre's gaze hardened, but not with anger, with purpose. "Then we'll honor her by doing the same." That evening, while Maya rested, DeAndre met with a detective from the Houston Police Department. "We traced Evelyn's rental car," the detective said. "She's still in Texas, checked into a small motel outside the city. She hasn't used her passport. Seems like she wants to make peace, not trouble." "Peace?" DeAndre repeated under his breath. He thanked the detective and left. An hour later he pulled up at the old motel. It was quiet, the neon sign buzzing faintly above the cracked parking lot. He found her room easily, number 14. The door was slightly ajar, the sound of gospel music drifting out. He knocked gently. "Evelyn." The music stopped. After a pause she spoke. "Come in." She was sitting on the edge of the bed, a Bible on her lap, eyes swollen from crying. For the first time she looked small, not the fierce woman who once threw a child into the rain, but a broken one who had finally run out of fight. "I didn't expect you to come," she whispered. "I almost didn't," he said. "But I needed to see the woman who made my sister believe she was worthless." She flinched but nodded. "I deserve that." He crossed his arms. "Why send the letter now?" "Because running from truth hurts more than facing it," she said. "I watched the news. I know you took her to America. When I saw her walk again, something broke in me. I realized all the hate I gave her was meant for myself." Her voice trembled as she looked up at him. "You can tell the police where I am. I'm tired. I'm ready to face what I did." He studied her for a long moment. "Maya doesn't need revenge. She needs peace. If you're sincere, you'll give her that." Evelyn nodded slowly. "I will. I'll confess everything, the pension, the lies, even what really happened to her father. He didn't deserve what I did." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "You know she forgave you, right? Her mother too." Evelyn looked stunned. "Forgave me?" He nodded. Ngozi's last words were mercy. You were part of their story for a reason. Maybe this is how you rewrite your ending. Tears streamed down her face. Tell her. Tell Maya I'm sorry. Tell her I never hated her. I hated the mirror she held up to me. I will, he said quietly. As he left, the gospel song resumed behind him, faint but full of meaning. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. A week later, Evelyn turned herself in. Her confession cleared the air and helped the Nigerian authorities reopen Adezena's case with new understanding. It turned out she had covered up an accidental overdose, fearing blame and shame. Her sentence was reduced, but she agreed to work in rehabilitation service for abused children, a chance at redemption. Meanwhile, Maya began physical therapy in Houston. Each step was a victory. By the third month, she walked without crutches. By the sixth, she ran a few steps and cried with joy. On a bright summer afternoon, she stood outside a youth foundation building funded by DeAndre. The sign above read, Maya Hope Center, for every child who deserves a second chance. She turned to her brother, smiling through tears. You did this for me? No, he said. We did this together. This is your legacy, Maya. From pain to purpose. She took his hand. Thank you for finding me in the rain. He smiled. The rain only made it clearer where the light was coming from. Tony stood nearby, tears shining in her eyes. Your mother would be proud, she said softly. As they watched children playing in the courtyard, Maya whispered, Can I say something? Of course. She turned toward the camera crew filming the opening of the center and said, I was once the girl nobody wanted. The world called me broken, but someone saw beyond my pain. Today I can walk again, not just on my feet but in my purpose. If you're watching this, never give up on yourself. The same God who sent help for me can send help for you too. The crowd erupted in applause. DeAndre placed a protective arm around her shoulders, both smiling toward the sky. Far away in a Nigerian women's correctional facility, Evelyn watched the clip on the community TV, tears streaming down her cheeks. For the first time she smiled, a real smile. She whispered, Walk well, Maya. Walk into your destiny. And she closed her eyes, letting peace wash over her. The afternoon sun hung golden over Houston as laughter drifted across the courtyard of the Maya Hope Center. The scent of freshly painted walls mixed with the aroma of fried plantain coming from the kitchen. Children chased one another in the playground, their joy echoing through the air like music. Maya stood near the fountain in the center of the compound, dressed in a simple white summer dress. Her hair was braided neatly, her steps light and sure, no crutches, no limp, just the confident stride of a girl who had conquered what once held her down. Look at you, DeAndre said with a grin as he approached her. 6 months ago you couldn't walk without help. Now you're running circles around everyone. She laughed softly. You promised I would walk again. You kept your promise, brother? He smiled. And you kept your faith. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the children play. Then Maya spoke again, her voice quiet but thoughtful. Do you think she's watching this too? He didn't have to ask who she met. I believe so, he said. From where she is, she's proud of you. Both of them, your mother and Evelyn. Maya nodded slowly. Aunt Tony said Evelyn is teaching other women in the correctional center. About kindness and raising children with love. That's true, DeAndre replied. I got a letter from her last week. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. Maya took it gently, opened it and began to read aloud. Dear Maya, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope someday you will believe that I am truly sorry. Every night I think about the little girl I left in the rain, and how God gave her wings when I tried to break them. You're a miracle. I am using my days here to help other women so that no child under their care ever feels unwanted again. When you walk, walk for both of us. With regret and hope. Evelyn. Maya's voice trembled as she finished. Tears glistened in her eyes. She said I'm a miracle, she whispered. I used to think I was a mistake. DeAndre placed a hand on her shoulder. You were never a mistake. You were the light sent to reveal the darkness, and turn it into something beautiful. She smiled through her tears. I forgive her, big brother. I truly do. He nodded. That's what makes you stronger than the pain. Later that evening, the center hosted its first graduation for children completing the rehabilitation program. Maya walked to the podium as applause filled the hall. Her smile was radiant, her heart steady. She looked out at the crowd, children, donors, journalists, and volunteers, and began to speak. When I was little, she said, I thought the world had forgotten me. I thought my disability was punishment, and love was something meant for others. But one rainy afternoon, a stranger saw me in the mud and offered me an umbrella. That man became my brother, my protector, and my family. My story isn't about pity, it's about purpose. Every person you see here has been given a second chance just like me. If you're watching this from anywhere in the world and you feel abandoned or broken, remember, your pain is not the end. Sometimes, it's the beginning of a miracle. The hall rose to its feet in thunderous applause. DeAndre wiped his eyes discreetly and smiled at Tony, who clapped proudly from the front row. When the ceremony ended, the two siblings walked out together into the warm Texas night. The sky was painted in shades of orange and violet. The city lights blinked in the distance like tiny stars. Tomorrow, DeAndre said, we'll visit the beach. There's something about standing where the ocean meets the sky. It reminds you how big God's grace really is. Maya nodded. And after that? He smiled. After that we go back to Lagos. The center there is waiting. More children need us. Us, she repeated, grinning. I like the sound of that. He laughed softly. Good. Because it's going to be us forever, little sister. They walked in silence for a while, the sound of crickets and the soft hum of passing cars surrounding them. Then Maya said, Brother, do you think I'll ever see her again? Evelyn. DeAndre looked up at the sky. Maybe one day. When she's free and you're ready. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means living without hate. Maya smiled thoughtfully. Then I'll wait for that day. And when it comes, I'll tell her thank you, for teaching me what love should never be. He chuckled softly. You've grown wiser than all of us. She giggled. I learned from the best. They reached the gate where the words Hope Lives Here glowed softly under the lights. DeAndre looked at them and whispered almost to himself, It sure does. As they walked inside, a gentle wind passed through the courtyard, scattering flower petals across the ground. It felt like a blessing, from the mother who had prayed for her child's safety, from the father whose legacy had found its way home, and even from the stepmother whose redemption had begun where her sin once stood. Maya turned to her brother and said, The rain that chased me away was the same rain that led you to me. He smiled and squeezed her hand. And now the sun that rose for you will never set again. The camera panned upward, catching the glowing lights of the center, the children laughing in the background and the two figures, hand in hand, walking toward tomorrow. What lesson did you take away from Maya's journey? Was it forgiveness, destiny, or the power of kindness to change a life? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with others who believe in miracles. Sparkles, because sometimes the people we save are the ones we were destined to call family.